Hello grade 10s, we are continuing today with salaries and wages. Now, I want to take you back to last week. Remember, we started off with salaries and wages. We looked at the main differences between salaries and wages. Hopefully you know them. Salaries are monthly, wages are weekly or every second week, that we call bi-weekly. We will more or less pay out salaries at the end of the month. And there will be deductions for all salaries. So the salary earners will have deductions and then they will earn a net salary. So that net salary is the money the person receives. The gross salary, again, before all the deductions, that is the expense for the company. And that is the actual salary they get. But remember, gross salary minus the deductions will give you your net salary. Therefore, the deductions will be paid over to all those institutions. The net salary will be paid over to your salary earner or worker, and the gross salary will be the main expense for the company. We are going to look at that in detail in our next segment. Now, firstly, I want to leave you with two questions and just get you back into the groove. Maybe think about salaries again. Let's look at those two questions. Number one, what amount will Thando receive in her bank account? And then number two, what is the total expense for the company to employ all the salary earners? Now, I'm going to take you back to last week's journal. And here's last week's salary journal. And please, again, I'm asking you, Thando, what will Thando get in her bank account? And what is the total expense for the company during this month? I'm going to give you 2 minutes to quickly complete that. Okay, let's look at your answers. Now, number one, the question was, what did Thando receive in her bank account at the end of this month? Now, let's go and look at it. Hopefully, you read it carefully, and you will see number one will be your answer. Your net salary for Thando was 12,311. And that's the money Thando will receive in a bank account. Why? Your net salary is the amount physically received by the worker or the employee. Now, number two, I asked, what is the full expense to employ all the salary earners? Now, the full expense will be your gross salary, which would be 51,100. But now we need to remember that all the contributions, your total contributions, and this is the amount here, the 5,335, that will also be forming part of the expense for the company to employ these three salary earners and then your total will be 56,000, and it will be 435. And I know, guys, that you got both right, but now, very, very important work. We've completed the salary journal last week. This is it, and I hope that you went home and you practiced a few more. Remember, accounting is practice, practice, practice. The more you practice, the better you'll become in accounting and the better your marks will look like at the end of each and every term. So the more practice, the better you'll be. Now, how do I post these columns to my general ledger? You now need to go and look at all the T accounts that we need to create for Salaries Journal. There's quite a few new T accounts, so please pay attention, look at them closely, and then you will fly through the posting from the Salaries Journal to the general ledger. Let's go and look at it. Now, your very first column is your gross salary, and that gross salary, we said, it's an expense. So this expense will go to your T account called salary. So let's go and look at it. Remember, in your general ledger, you will have two sections. You'll have your balance sheet section, and under your balance sheet section, you'll have your assets and your liabilities. The next one will be your nominal section. And here it is, your nominal section will be shown here. Now remember, I said salaries will be your expense account, and we'll say it's a plus minus, but remember, the expense goes up, but it is negative for my owner's equity because my owner don't like any expenses, especially if they're very big. Now what will I write? The end of the month is February 28, and I will go and write here gross salaries. Or you can write sundry accounts. Now you see that I'm using abbreviations. Please don't use abbreviations. You need to write everything in full. And then the amount is 51,500. Now we created a debit here. Now we need to go and create credits for this debit. Now I'm saying it correctly. We now need to go and create a few credits for this debit. Now let's go and look at the salaries journal again. So here's my journal. And now my next column will be my pension fund. Now, as you can see, your pension fund falls under deduction. So we are deducting a certain amount for pension fund, and you will see this amount is 2,555. Now, this amount needs to be paid by the business, the sole trader, the company, the partnership. This amount needs to be paid over to the pension fund. But if we didn't pay it yet, we still owe this money. And you will see with all the deductions here, we will owe it up to when it's paid. So therefore, all of them will be liabilities. Now let's go and look at your pension fund, your 2,555. How will I write it in? You will see I'm opening up a ledger called Aldi's Pension Fund. That's my pension fund name. It will be a liability. And your liability now will increase with 2,555. Let's go and double check the amount just to be 100% correct. 2,555, that is your amount that you will enter in your Aldi's pension fund. So let's fill it in, 2,555. Now, the next one, your pension fund is done. Let's go and look at it. Your pay as you earn. Now, who do I pay this amount over to? I will pay it over to SARS. So remember, SARS pay as you earn is your new T account, and it will be 9198. So 9198 will go to your new T account called SARS pay as you earn. There it is, 9198. And you can see that I wrote it on the credit side. So SARS pay as you earn will also be forming part of your liabilities. And this liability will be there until you pay it. Now let's go and look at the next column. Your next column again, medical aid. What was your deduction for medical aid? You deducted 4,400 Rand from your employees, and that 4,400 now needs to go to your medical aid T account. Now let's go and create it. There's your health medical aid, that's your name, 4,400, and you will see it's on the credit side because this 4,400 is now owed to the medical aid fund because you took it from your workers and now you owe that money to the medical aid. Next column, a very easy one as well, your UIF. Now your UIF is 440, and also we will use the T account name SARS UIF. So let's go and create a SARS UIF T account. You will see it's there, and we will also create this to show it's a liability. Remember, we owe this money to SARS for the UIF deduction. And now we've completed all the deductions. So grade 10s, make a note, gross salary, that's the expense. All the deductions will be liabilities. But now, remember you have 51,100 on the debit side. Now, that's quite a big debit, right? What other credit do I need to create now to equal my debit side? Remember, your debits always need to equal your credits. Let's go and look at the next column in my salaries journal. Here's my salaries journal, and you can see my next column is the total. But now, don't get confused. How did I get this total? I took all of these amounts and I added them up to give me my total there. So therefore, the total will never be transferred to a T account. We'll never have a T account name called total. Doesn't make sense. Total of what? So the total column is there just to help you to calculate your net salary, and that net salary is the money you need to pay to your employees. Remember, the net salary goes to the employees. So that amount is owed to your employees until you pay them. So let's go and create a T account called creditors for salaries. And let's take that amount to creditors for salaries. And remember, creditors for salaries, also a liability, therefore on the credit side. And then you'll see all your credits, therefore all your deductions and your creditors for salaries. All of those amounts will equal your amount in the salaries T account, your expense account. And that amount, again, 51,100. You can go and double check and you will see. So therefore, the 34,507, the 440, the 4,400, the 9,198, and the 2,555, all of those added will give you your debit entry of 51,100. But let's now take your 34,507 to your creditors for salaries. Here it is, 34,507. And as you can see, the contra account for all of your liabilities will be salaries. You see, all of them will be salaries. Good. Now, your next column. Let's go and look at your next column, your check number column. Now, this column will only be used, guys, as soon as I wrote our checks. Now, when I write our checks, those checks will be recorded in your CPJ. So don't get confused. When you write out the check in your CPJ, you will also use that check number and post those check numbers to your salaries journal to show that you have paid each salary worker individually. Or if you use the EFT form, the electronic fund transfer form, you will just say BS for bank statement. But your next column, let's go and look at it. Your next column will be your employer's contributions. Now, what you need to know about employer's contributions, I have an expense side, but as well a liability side. So therefore, for every column here, except your total column, I will have an expense, because we have extra expenses to employ these people, but we also owe an extra amount to the different institutions. So the first contribution is medical aid. And you can see your medical aid here is 1,900. So how do I record this in your ledger? Let's go and see. We have to go to your first tier account called Health Medical Aid, and you will create this entry and say 1,900, and you will call it Medical Aid Fund Contribution. Now, where will my debit be? This will be your debit account. Now let's go and look at your debit account. Do we have it? Yes, we have medical aid contributions, and this will be an expense. And now, at the end of Feb, we are going to say February 28, we are going to say Health Medical Aid Fund. I'm abbreviating. Please don't abbreviate in your exam papers or projects. And that will be 1,900. And as you can see, we have a debit for a credit there. Now, let's go back to the journal to our next column. Our next column is pension fund. And this contribution was 2,555. Now, let's go to your pension fund. We owe the pension fund more. How much more? 2,555. And now, we created a credit. So where's my debit? It will be in the expense section on pension fund contributions. And let's go and look at it. Your pension fund contributions. Now, as you can see, it's a test. I didn't give you a T account for pension fund contributions. So what do? You don't need to record it on the debit side because you don't have the T account now. But grade 10s, if I give you the T account, it will be called pension fund contributions. You will write it on the debit side to say, Aldi's pension fund, SJ 2,555. Be careful. I'm not going to give you thousands of T accounts in a test or project to complete. I'm going to nitpick a few. I'm going to give you a few T accounts to do, and you need to only do those few. But let's continue with the salaries journal. We're almost done. You can have a break. The next column, your UIF. So your UIF increased as well. You have a bigger contribution. We'll go to SARS UIF in your balance sheet because you owe more money to SARS UIF. How much more? 440. But now, remember, you need to create the expense account. Let's go and see. Did I give you one? Yes. UIF contributions. Expenses goes up on the debit, down on the credit. So we'll have February 28. We're going to say SARS UIF because that's my contra account. And then I'm going to say salaries journal, 440. Now, let's go to the very last column in your salaries journal. There it is. SDL. SDL, we have a contribution here. So again, an expense and a liability. Let's go and post it to the general journal. Let's go and see. I gave you the liability SARS SDL. Now, as you can see, I created one for salaries. But remember, salaries, they won't have any deductions on SDL, only a 1% contribution. So it's 0 for salaries, and you won't have this entry, but you'll have an SDL contribution of 440, and then you posted everything. Remember, I didn't give you an expense account for SARS SDL. If you get it, you can just go and create an SDL contribution account, and you'll post it on the debit side. But what's my final entries for all my liabilities? I will maybe include a section to say, pay all the salary workers, pay all your liabilities. What do I do now? I have to go to each an individual liability account. I need to add them up. So in this case, I will have 5,110. That's the adding. I will pay them then, therefore, 5,110. And then I will pay them, say, on the last day of the month. And I will pay them with a check. So I can say CPJ. And now remember, if you have the bank T account, what will happen to bank? Bank is an asset, and bank will therefore go down. And here's my credit for my debit. Now, let's quickly do one more. Let's look at your health medical aid. Again, you add it up. You will get 6,300. So therefore, I have to pay how much to the health medical aid? I need to pay 6,300 to create no liability, to have everything transferred. So therefore, again, I'm paying through bank. And with that, you can finish up all of your other T accounts as shown here. You will just go to the debit side and pay the liability. If you paid the liability, you don't owe it anymore. Now, guys, I will see you after the break, and then we'll continue with your wages. See you now. Okay, guys, so let's continue with wages. Now, we completed the salaries journal. We looked at posting the salaries journal to the general ledger, and now wages. So let's quickly go through the key concepts of wages. So let's firstly look at wages. Your wages is your remuneration paid to employees on a basis of an hourly rate or paid weekly. So the amount varies depending on the hours worked. So we are going to pay them per hour, or we're going to say, we're going to pay you for per unit. Every unit you completed, we'll pay you. Next one, let's look at the next one, a payslip. What is a payslip again? A payslip is given to each employee that provides information about the gross wage and then deductions and your net wage. The rate of remuneration, that is actually the rate per hour or the unit rate. If you create 1 chair per hour, I can give you 50 Rand for that chair. If you create 1 chair in 2 hours, I can still give you only 50 Rand, although you worked double the amount of time than your friend. That is your rate per hour or rate of remuneration. Your normal time, that is normally a system according to which employees are paid at a set fee per hour. And in South Africa, mostly we're going to use 40-hour weeks. So each worker or each employee will work 40 hours a week. Overtime, yes, people like overtime, so they will get extra money. So remuneration paid to workers who work longer than the normal 40 hours. And that's also at a higher fee. So I can give maybe 150 for every 1 Rand. So say you work for an hour for 20 Rand, I pay you 1.5. So overtime hours will be 30 Rand an hour. Let's go look at gross wage. Your gross wage will be your basic wage plus any overtime. And then you'll normally minus all your deductions, and we're going to quickly look at deductions again, and then you will get your net wage. So how do I get my net wage again? Gross wages less deductions. But let's refresh your memory on all the deductions your salary and wage workers can earn or get. So normally they will earn a gross wage, and we will pay a certain amount to SARS. We call it pay as you earn. And that money goes to the South African Revenue Service. What else can we take from their gross wage? We can take an amount for medical aid. So if they get sick, they can go to a private hospital, or some medicines can be bought with the money they saved in their medical aid fund. The next one, the UIF, the Unemployment Insurance Fund, that's also a deduction. It's a compulsory deduction, so every person who earns a salary or wage is required to contribute a percentage of his income to the UIF. So whenever they lose their jobs or they're retrenched, they can get a certain amount from the government. And then lastly, the last deduction, your pension fund deduction. And that is when you want to retire one day. Therefore, you will contribute to your pension fund, hopefully from the very first month you work, and then you can retire, hopefully at a nice age of 60 or 65, and then you don't need to be dependent on the state or SASSA to get a certain amount from them. But contributions. What contributions do we have? The same thing, again, UIF contributions, it's compulsory. You have a pension fund, which is optional, medical aid fund, which is optional, and then also a skills development levy, which is compulsory. So that's the 4 the 4 contributions the employer can make. Now remember, all contributions will be extra expenses to any business. So if they employ someone, they earn a wage. Remember, the gross wage will be the expense for the business, and then also the contributions. That's an extra expense for the business. Now, these contributions, you will see, I want to emphasize the UIF and the STL. As you can see, let's underline it quickly. The UIF and the STL will always be at 1%. Now, remember this, guys. If I don't give you a percentage in your exam or in a project, know that you need to use 1% for the contribution and 1% for the deduction. But let's jump into information to complete a wage journal. It's very similar than the salaries journal. So, required, I'm going to ask this and read it with you. The information below applies to the employees of the firm, Neo Traders. Now we need to use this information to complete the wage journal for the week ended. And you can see we are now going to pay these workers, these employees will get a weekly wage. And we need to do it for the end of February. Now let's go and read the information. The information states, Neo Traders have a working week of 40 hours. So they expect of all their wage workers to work 40 hours. Now, workers who work more than 40 hours a week will be paid at the overtime rate of 1.5 times. So if they get 1 rand an hour, if it's overtime, they'll get 1 rand 50. If it's 100 rand an hour, what will they earn as overtime rate? 150 per hour then. But let's go and look at this company's rates. They said the basic rate for all workers is 40 rand per hour. Great. So every worker earns the same amount of money here. Let's continue with the wording here. They say the following workers work the following hours for the week ended 30 June, and I see there's a mistake. Let's quickly fix it. It's actually the 28th of February. Now, I have number 1, Bradley, number 2, Sean, and then number 3, Ben. What do I need to do? I need to go and look at Bradley. How many hours did Bradley work? He worked 42 hours, so therefore 40 hours will be normal. And now